All right, everyone. We're going to get our other Facebook groups in here for just a second, but we're spinning. And look at that. We are here and we are good to go. Thank you guys for joining us on another Tuesday evening for Building the Broncos. Nick is having some family time tonight. And so that means I get to be joined by the great legend, Lance. Lance, how you doing out there, man?
What's going on, Carl? It's good to be back with you here on a wonderful Tuesday evening. I was like, wait, this face doesn't line up with the one I'm usually used to talking to, man. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a crazy couple days. We had pretty much every kind of weather other than a hurricane in about a
How much snow did you
40-minute
get?
period. We got, well, it's hard to tell because there was like 60-mile-per-hour winds with it. So
Oh,
some parts are up to your hip and other parts are like an inch thick. But no, we had rain. We had an inch of rain in like 10 minutes. Then we had a hail for 30 minutes. And then a blizzard came in right after that. And yeah, it was a little bit crazy out there. So the entire bottom layer of scooping snow this morning was all just hailstones. And like I said, Kansas, you just never know. And it's supposed to be 60, I think, tomorrow.
so it's
So
it's actually been kind of crazy up here in Wyoming because for the last about week or so, it's been tropical paradise, Wyoming. We've been 64, 65 degrees damn near every day until Saturday when I wanted to go outside and actually get some yard work done, and it snowed an inch. And then it snowed all day Sunday as well. So
there you go.
no, the weather's been turbulent here. It's been a lot of fun though. We did get out and we got some new chickens. In fact, so if you guys hear some like crazy noises behind me, I have 11 new chicks behind me right now, and a chicken that got hurt in another case. So if you guys hear random barking and flapping wings and stuff like that, I do apologize. But there's no other place currently we have in our household that can house baby chickens and then another chick because we limited on space and there's nowhere else outside that we can keep this hurt chicken by ourselves. So I do apologize for that if that does come up.
No, they're just our cheering section in the background. That's what
But
they are.
well,
But
it's they're the chicken nuggets that we're building for our Wendy's Facebook group.
ooh, there we go. There we go. But I did want to talk about our cheering section in the comments here. I just want to say hello to a few people. We got Daniel Berry Sports Highlights coming in saying, yo, back to you. And we got a lot of comments coming in about our upcoming topic. We'll get to that here in just a sec. But we got Mike S coming in also saying, what's up, Carl, Lance, Scott, Dylan, and Broncos country. Mike, good to see you in here. And let's see, I'm trying to find some non-Dak comments, of course, real quick, because we'll get into plenty of that as we get into this. But let's see, we got MBLEX Test Prep saying, to me and Sean Payton, the mastermind behind the trade up to draft Drake J. May, quarterback of North Carolina. Yeah, it's I love Sean Payton when he gets in front of media. Like, you never know exactly what's going to come out. There's those times where he like wants to talk forever about a certain subject, and then he's asked about the Russell Wilson situation, and his answer is, no, I'm good. Like, did you think about the 85 million? No. Take a drink of his coffee, move on. And so, and then, he got talking about the draft, of course, and oh yeah, we could trade up if we really want to, and got to talking about JJ McCarthy, and so everybody was going crazy with that. They've talked about trading back, and I think nobody has any kind of clue where the Broncos are planning on going with this draft by any means, and that's how Sean Payton loves it. He loves getting people talking out of both sides of things and trying to see where it's going. So it's fun to see all this, and it's going to be interesting to see where it actually ends up at the end of all this craziness.
Yeah, I think the big thing is like you can never believe anything that you're hearing coming out of head coaches or even general managers at the owners meetings at the combine. Like you're never going to truly know what's going on, but it does seem like Sean Payton likes to stir the pot like frequently, and he does it to the national media types. When he gets in front of the local media, he's very gruff, he's very stern, he doesn't like to answer questions with a lot of length. And then when he does do that, he gets on the next time he comes around, he'll give long drawn out answers where he says a lot but actually doesn't say anything. So his press conference are always a whirlwind of emotions, especially if you want to like read between the lines, because again, even with his comments, I believe it was Ian Rappaport that asked a question of them potentially moving up to go get a quarterback, and he's like, what contrary to your report, Ian, yes, we can move up if we want to. And Ian's like, oh, I didn't say it. You kind of did. Yeah, you really kind of did. And then he went on the long diatribe of, it's nice to be Monty Austin for it, which there were some people on Twitter that was like, oh, the Broncos are talking to the Cardinals. Maybe they're going to move up to number 4 overall. I reading my own, my own brain in this situation right now is saying that, like I said this on Dove Valley Deep Divers on Friday last week. I think that the likelihood of the Broncos trading down is like over 60%. If they trade up, it's like a 25%. And then they're probably not, like, if they do draft a player at number 12 overall without a trade, that's like a 50% likelihood. So, like, I don't think that anything that Sean Payton said really gave any direction on what they were doing. It was more just to, like, get people's feathers ruffled up and get the talk back on the Denver Broncos again.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I saw a few of the tables, the breakfast tables of the different coaches and GMs and stuff like that. And as bad as the Broncos have been, their media presence is like all over the place. And I saw even some Broncos media going to other teams' tables to ask their coaches about Bronco questions, like talking to Cardinals people. I saw one that went and talked to a Panthers coach because of Sternad making the decision to go back to the Broncos.
Oh, I missed that one.
Yeah. And he's like, why do you think he made the decision to not come to you guys after you made an offer to him and he had accepted? And the coach was like, I don't know. You would have talked to somebody else about this. And I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, that's a stupid question. Who cares about a backup linebacker, a special teams guy that decided to go elsewhere kind of thing? But it just, like I said, the Broncos are still plenty of talk of the town. And partly because Sean Payton is just such a big presence. And obviously the ownership is an even bigger presence. And talking about that, I mean, so our subject today, and this is, I mean, this might be very far out there, all that kind of stuff, but there was news made today that the Cowboys and Dak Prescott doesn't sound like they're going to get a long-term contract done, and he's on the last year of his contract. And it kind of made it sound like there is a real possibility he could be a free agent in 2025. And he's coming off a year where for a little bit, there was some talk of, hey, is this the MVP of the NFL?
Yep.
And so it just kind of surprising, this guy possibly truly in the prime of his career, playing some of his best football, could be hitting the open market. And he's a guy that fits very well with what Sean Payton likes to do as a coach, as a quarterback. There's a lot of things that kind of line up there. And so I wanted to ask the question, would this change anything that you do this year when you're looking at the quarterback position?
For this year, no, at least not in my opinion. I mean, I understand Dak Prescott is likely a top 10 quarterback, maybe top 7 quarterback in the NFL. I actually was kind of pulling some stuff up and doing some research on him. I mean, obviously this last season, he led the NFL, 36 touchdown passes, threw for 4,500 yards. Last year dealt with some injuries, so kind of had a down year. The year before that, threw for 44, 49, and 37 touchdowns, which is career high. The year before that was the COVID year, and I believe that he broke his ankle early in that season because he had another down year there. But in 2019, threw for damn near 5,000 yards, 30 touchdowns. I mean, we're talking about an upper echelon level quarterback when he's healthy and out there on the field. And like you said, he does a lot of the things that the Broncos like to do in terms of throwing over the middle of the field, processing information really quickly, getting the ball out of his hands. He doesn't take a lot of sacks. Can extend the play a little bit, and that's where he does get hurt, is that especially that ankle injury he suffered back in 2020. But to me, for this year specifically, it doesn't alter my plans at all. I mean, maybe we could think about that in 2025, and if this rumor does come to fruition where they don't reach a long-term agreement with him, then we can explore that possibility. But for 2024, I don't think that this changes a damn thing for the Broncos right now.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I know in our chat, and I've seen on Twitter a few times, there's a lot of people that are kind of excited that prospect of the Broncos having Dak here. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of when the Broncos hired Nathaniel Hackett. And they had these dreams of Hackett is great friends with Aaron Rodgers. So that's going to mean he's going to want to come here to Denver. And then obviously he goes and signs that contract with the the Packers to stay another year, then gets traded to the Jets, and the Broncos end up with Russell Wilson, unfortunately. And so I think back then was it the 2021 draft when that happened, or 2022 or 2020? I think it was 2021 was when all that happened. And, the Broncos are staring at the number 9 pick, and some of that news of Rodgers isn't happy with the Packers. And, they obviously end up passing on quarterbacks and got a great player, Patrick Surtain. Don't get me wrong on that note, but I'm just kind of wondering how much that maybe impacted their decision to go ahead and pass on quarterback at that time. And so I'm running into that now with, okay, I would not be making any decisions based on the hope that Dak Prescott hits free agency. It's just go ahead.
Well, no, I was just saying I'm with you on that. Like, is this another one of those things where we're snake bitten? And String Guy coming in here, and I'm going to grab this comment really fast, saying they could have drafted Dak Prescott. Instead, they took Paxton Lynch. And like, as fate would determine it here, Jerry Jones was all in on Paxton Lynch, and he was trying to trade up above the Kansas City Chiefs because he knew that there was another team in on Paxton Lynch because he wanted Paxton Lynch as his quarterback. The Broncos beat him to it, and they went and got him. Well, then, as fate holds here, Dak Prescott falls to the 4th round. Jerry Jones goes and gets his guy in Dak Prescott. He turns into what we are now. Flip those roles, though, because the Broncos were very interested in Dak Prescott, higher than where the Cowboys ended up taking him overall. I think they had him as a 2nd-round grade on their board.
Yep. They
liked him a lot. Dak Prescott missed his flight out of Dallas. I don't remember exactly how it all went down, but he missed his flight out of Dallas to come meet with the Broncos in Denver. And when he missed his flight, John Elway took him off the draft board. Like it's a very it's very coincidental that the Broncos could potentially end up with a guy like that. But I don't know. I think that there's the snake bitten aspect of drafting Paxton Lynch and then not taking Josh Allen. There's the snake bitten impact of, and this is me speculating here, there's a snake bitten impact of what the Broncos just did with Russell Wilson, trading all that draft capital, giving a huge contract to a guy. I mean, Dak Prescott's on the last year of his deal, like you were just talking about. He's got a $55 million cap number this year with $66 million dead. So not doing anything like that. But he goes into 4 void years. And if the Cowboys don't get an extension done, they're on the hook for $40 million for next season in just dead money to not have Dak Prescott play for the Dallas Cowboys. They've got plenty of salary cap space. They got $100 million in space next year, which might play into the situation a little bit here. But are the Broncos going to be snake bitten by the fact that they just paid $85 million to Russell Wilson and then have to go out and pay a big money contract to a guy like Dak Prescott, who's going to ask for probably $55 to $60 million on a deal?
Yeah. No, and like I said, I'm with you there. And I had some people on Twitter that were like, well, he would love to come to Denver because we have Sean Payton. I'm like, okay, but he also will love a lot of money. And if another team offers $60 million instead of us offering $55 million,
yep.
And especially if we decide, hey, we're just going to wait and we're going to hope that happens. There's just so much that can go wrong with that.
Yep.
Maybe he and the Cowboys refix their relationship and they get a long-term deal done. Now you've waited and now you're in trouble. Like I said, there's going to be 4 or 5 other teams that don't get a quarterback this year that are going to be looking for a quarterback next year. And some of them are going to have plenty of money to go out there and spend, just like the Broncos will. And $100 million, this is so weird to say, $100 million doesn't go as far as it used to. No. When you're thinking of the NFL, Broncos are going to have to pay Quinn Miners. Patrick Surtain's coming up on his deal being almost over. So that's probably $40 million.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, the first year cap hit's not going to be $40 million between the two of them. But you're kind of looking, again, those are 2 really big contracts you got to start thinking about. You've still got a lot of the rest of the roster you got to fill because there's a lot of players. I think they only have 27 under contract for next season, and that's without cutting anybody, if I remember right. So, again, the Broncos are going to have to make a lot of moves. That $100 million is not going to go as far as you would hope. And I mostly wanted to bring this up just because I would not want to make any 2024 decisions based on the hope that maybe Dak hits free agency.
No.
And so if you find yourself with loving one of these quarterbacks, go make that move.
Mm-hmm.
That's maybe you can't get one of the top 4, but if you love one of those guys that's 5, 6, 7, or 5, 6, or 7 in this draft, you love him more than other people, go get that guy. And if he doesn't work out, the great thing is you're not probably taking him at 12. Like you said, it's probably a trade back.
Yep.
You're either taking him end of round 1, 2, 3, 4, somewhere in there. Whether it's Bo Nix, top of round 2, Michael Penix, round 3, Michael Pratt, round 4. That doesn't keep you from, let's say they're not working out. You don't like what they're doing. It doesn't keep you from going and getting Dak. Like now you've just got yourself a really nice, cheap backup option. That's on a rookie deal that keeps that quarterback room at least a little bit cheaper. And talking about not cheap, we got Phil coming in saying, good evening, Carl and Lance. I will be very happy when we can stop guessing and start discussing the players we drafted. What are your thoughts on the new kickoff rule? Hashtag Buckham, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag Broncos for life. Yeah, so for those that don't know, the Broncos had, or not the Broncos, the NFL had some very big meetings. It's not just coaches getting together or having breakfast with people, but they made some major rule changes. I mean, I don't remember a time where they changed this many rules in one offseason. Because you got the new IR rule, which I love this one.
I want to get into that later.
It's no longer that you have to have them on the 53-man roster day 1 and then put them on IR. It's now you got 2 players you can put on IR at any time and then bring them back during the season. You got, of course, the drop hip rule that a lot of people are talking about of how that's going to change tackling in the NFL. And we got Lawrence Rivera coming in with stars since we're talking about the rules here. What up, everyone? No more hip drop tackles allowed anymore. And now we have XFL kickoffs, 2 big rule changes today. And so then, the kickoff rule, this is one where they have the players line up at the 40-yard line, both sides. You have the kicker way back, you have the returner way back, and then you got the others all lined up at the 40-yard line across from each other. And then nobody can move until the kickoff returner actually touches the ball.
Yep.
So the big thing they wanted to do here was they wanted to make the kick return an actual play in the NFL. Like here for a while, it's just been, okay, everybody, it's a touchback. Nobody wants to do these. You maybe get 1 kickoff return a game. Well, in the XFL, they're averaging something like 4 kickoff returns a game because of this rule, where teams feel a little bit more comfortable thinking they can maybe get a big play out of this. And this is a big rule for the Broncos because they have one of the top 3 returners in all of football on their roster. The Marvin Mims just became really, really valuable as an NFL prospect. And so Broncos, I guess, getting a little ahead of things, which is great to hear. So I'm excited for the Broncos. I'm excited to see what Mims can do. We saw it with that kickoff return against Miami last year. This guy gets through the first layer, he's gone. Like nobody's catching him. And like I said, big rule change there. The hip drop tackle. This is probably going to change how some teams view prospects. Maybe the tight end becomes a lot more valuable because it's a lot tougher to bring down a 270-pound man than it is a 200-pound wide receiver. So maybe teams start looking to value that tight end a little bit more. Maybe Brock Bowers, just saw his draft stock for sure get him in the top 10 now because of this kind of rule. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point with Brock Bowers specifically because his ability to create yards after the catch and run after the catch with the football in his hands. I mean, he's a big dude. He's very athletic. He's hard to bring down. Another player, and I'm gonna go kind of on a little diatribe here. It's not very long, but I follow Eric Galco, who's the director of football operations, player personnel at the Shrine Bowl, one of the big scouting bowls. He was working with the XFL when they created this rule and gave a big, long kind of diatribe. It was a long thread on Twitter earlier today talking about like how this is actually going to work. And you're going to see a big part of like blocking tight ends, bigger linebackers that can move really well, higher quality tacklers being the main focus of this. And quite honestly, it's going to also change the dynamic of the returner role because essentially the way that this is all set up is you've got the kick coverage team is on the 40, the kick receiving team is on the 35-yard line. No one can move until the ball is touched by the returner. And from there, you can get super creative in terms of how you want to run your return packages. And I think that offensive coordinators and creative play designers that work on the offensive side of the football are really going to dial in and create these amazing return packages with these special teams coordinators, because these players don't have to go one-on-one. You can move them around. You can do like say we're gonna pull it like a pulling guard, essentially. We're going to run duo block and just let our returner kind of read what's going on in front of them. Maybe run some zone plays. Essentially, we're creating a spread out football play where we can get creative with our design and then allow these players that are hyperactive with their vision, good and explosive with the ball in their hands, and create some explosive returns. That's a huge deal to me, and it really kind of boosts. You brought up Brock Bowers here, but a guy that I like, and especially with combining this new kickoff rule with the hip drop tackling rule. Tip Ryman from Illinois, man, he's a great blocker, so he's going to be valuable on the special teams aspect part of this thing. He's a difficult player to bring down if he gets the football in his hands. He's 6'5", 6'6", 270 pounds. Tip Ryman today, his draft stock, because of what he brings to the field as a football player, his stock is kind of soaring a little bit because he's so versatile and so capable of being a player that just excels with these new rule changes. That was the one, and Eric Galko brought it up. So again, sorry for the little diatribe there, but reading what Eric Galko had to say, it actually makes me excited for this new kickoff rule in general.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think the Broncos are one of the big beneficiaries of this rule.
Mm-hmm.
When they do have one of the best returners. Now you've given him 2 or 3 more touches a game where he has open field to go and do something great with it.
Well, he has a kickoff return for a touchdown in his history already, the Miami Dolphins game, which was a disaster. Right. But he has that kickoff return for a touchdown ability already.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, I mean, he's already shown it with punt returns, a couple of his big explosive plays on offense. So, yeah, you've maybe added another 3 or 4 explosive plays a year just because of this rule to the Broncos that maybe some other teams won't have as advantageous of an opportunity until they go get a player like this. And, for special teams coaches, again, this is, you kind of hated a lot of the rules that were coming out because it was kind of limiting how good special teams could really matter. And we know as Broncos people, special teams can make or break a career. Terrell Davis, he was almost thinking of walking away from football. And then he goes to Japan for a preseason games and has this incredible hit on a kickoff coverage. And the entire coaching staff comes up to him and is like, "Oh, we've got a place for you, man." And then he goes and has a Hall of Fame career. Yep. Like I said, he was 1 game away from just saying, football's not for me. And then he's in the Hall of Fame because of special teams play. So like I said, I'm more excited, just big plays. I mean, that's what the NFL is about. And we got Stephen Hyde coming in with a big comment saying, "I wouldn't chase Dak. Draft a quarterback this year, sit as a quarterback 2 for 1 season and learn. Then in 2025, dive in the deep end. Use the money under the cap to build around whoever we draft." Yeah, Stephen, I probably would be that way. We've got Michael Ronquillo coming in with 2 names of those quarterbacks, Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy. So right now, I guess I would say J.J. McCarthy probably off the table. It does sound like quarterbacks are going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And I don't think the Broncos are going to have the bidding ability to beat out the Minnesota Vikings to get up to 4. I think it's probably between them and the Giants of who gets that 4th quarterback at this point. And we'll see how much the Giants really want a quarterback or not. But yeah, so I think it's going to have to be that 5th, 6th, or 7th quarterback, which would probably be Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., and Spencer Rattler. I would say those are your next 3 on the board. Michael Pratt, again, he's probably just that. If we miss on everybody else, this is the guy that we get, just as he's probably a good backup option. And I really don't mind going after any of those guys. I mean, I have my order of how I like them. I've said on here before, I like Bo Nix. I really do. I think he'd be a pretty darn good fit. I think he has his limitations. Don't get me wrong. But I think with a guy like Sean Payton, who knows how to use a quarterback to their strengths, knows how to limit their limitations. I think of, I know some of these names are not going to go great, but like Trevor Siemian was there. I'm trying to think who else he had as quarterbacks that had some limitations in his time. I mean, even Jameis Winston had some limitations that he was able to play to his strengths and really take advantage of his skill set. So I think he could get the most out of him. And for a rookie contract, that can work great because, like I said, we got $100 million we can spend to surround this guy with lots of talent and build up a roster. And this is kind of I guess you could say, the Derek Carr argument. When he was on his rookie contract, the Raiders had some opportunities. They were looking like a top 3 team in football. I think it was his 3rd season until he broke his leg. And then he was never the same player after he broke his leg.
Mm-hmm.
Like that next year he played a little bit timid, kept getting rid of the ball a little bit faster than he probably should have. And he just didn't quite have the athleticism that he had before. There's just some things that kind of spiraled for him after that. But once he got paid like a top 5 quarterback, then there was a problem. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, if you want for the next 4 years to be in a good place for the Broncos and stand a chance to build a great roster, I think Bo Nix is a fine quarterback. I think Spencer Rattler is a fine quarterback. I think Michael Penix is a fine quarterback to do all those kind of things.
Yeah. I'm with you on Nix. Well, I'm not necessarily comfortable with the Broncos drafting him at 12, and I'm not sure where you stand on that, to tell you the truth. But if the Broncos do trade down, like I want them to. I want them to trade down because I do think that this is the year for them to really kind of help bolster that draft capital. They need to get a 2nd-round pick this year. They need future picks as well. So I'm looking for them to move down at least one big time and then another small time in the 1st round, maybe going down from like 12 to 21 with the Rams. I know they're interested in a tackle. And then maybe again with the team that's interested in like a wide receiver, maybe Adonai Mitchell is a player that like the Ravens want to come and get. Hint, hint. Like that's what I'm looking for. Gain as much draft capital as you possibly can. Bo Nix, there multiple reports are out there right now saying that Bo Nix is the only quarterback tied to the Broncos right now. He's frequently tied at 12. Teams don't want him inside the top 40. The Broncos can get him wherever the hell they want to, and they can trade back multiple times and still get him if they want him. I think he's a good fit for what Sean Payton wants to do. Partially because the processing. He processes the game so well, and he gets the ball out of his hands just incredibly quickly. You need to go and start this rebuild. And if you have a guy like a Bo Nix, where you can ride with a guy that's going to be 24 years old, by the way, for a handful of seasons, I think you're right. I think the Derek Carr comparison, I want to say conversation, but anyways, comparison is the right one there. I think that a little bit less arm talent, but same kind of player. Get the ball out quickly and just kind of work yourself through. Build up the talent on this roster. Find a quarterback that you really truly like in a couple of years, and then go in that specific direction. So I don't know. I mean, I'm all about Michael Penix Jr. though. I think that there's some upside with him. Especially thrown to the boundary, which doesn't work with Sean Payton, unfortunately. Yeah.
We got Tim Hall coming in with a $4.99 asking a question about Nix, saying, obviously we don't know what will happen next year with college performances, but as of right now, where would you rank Nix versus the 2025 quarterback class? I'm not very high on the 2025 class, so I would probably put him top 3. I think you got Carson Beck there in Georgia. I don't think he's proven enough to be ahead of Nix right now, but he's got better tools. Mm-hmm. So I feel pretty comfortable saying he's going to have a really good year next year. Probably going to be one of those top 10 picks. You got Shador Sanders. Man, I hate saying this on a Denver podcast. I'm not very high on him. I just saw some things in his game last year that had me very concerned. Took a ton of sacks. And one of the questions that Sean Payton answered, hey, what do you need to do to be better on offense next year? Take fewer sacks. So then you go get a quarterback.
Take fewer sacks and run the ball better.
Yeah. And so I think that's a little bit of my concern. And I don't think he has a good enough arm. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say he has a bad arm. I'm just saying it's not an elite arm. And he was just so up and down. Like there would be parts of the game where it'd be like 2 quarters between them getting a first down. And it just was like, okay, you got to go do something. I know he didn't have the best talent around him, so it's not all on him. but there were so many times it just felt like that offense was completely bogged down. And I never felt that when I watched a guy like Bo Nix or Michael Penix, some of those kind of guys, or Caleb Williams or Drake May, like all those guys, like they might have a couple drives that stall, but you weren't going to get them for more than maybe 2 drives.
Yep.
So, like I said, I'd probably put him second, third, somewhere in there.
So the thing with Shador, and this is going to piss a lot of people off, especially in the Denver market, which, I mean, obviously Denver podcast here, so take this for what it's worth. Shador Sanders told you he couldn't read defenses. He straight up said it. He straight up said that he did not know how to read defenses. He just kind of plays by the like off the cuff, the backyard football thing. Do we really think that that's going to work with Sean Payton? Like I'm asking the honest. Do you really think Shador Sanders, openly admitting in an interview, this is about a month and a half ago, like right after the whole Louis Vuitton fashion thing that they did, he's like, yeah, we didn't read defenses. I don't really do that. I just kind of play. Those are Shador Sanders' words. You think that Sean Payton's going to go for that? Probably not. Quinn Ewers is the guy for next year. I think Carson Beck's a good one. Hudson Card's another one. Riley Leonard, was he the Duke kid? Where did he go? I know he transferred. Where did he go? Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
He went to Notre Dame. That's another one to kind of keep your eyes on. I'm with you though, Carl. This next quarterback class is not great. Probably not something that I would be super encouraged about unless we see a big step from and I know I just got done crapping all over his name, but unless we see a big step from Shador Sanders, like that's the guy that has the tools that you really like to see. Ewers is the dude though. I think that he's poised for a big year at Texas this year.
It's possible. I'm up and down. He had some great wide receivers to throw to, great tight end, great offensive line. And there's a lot of plays he left out there that they could have been possibly national champions if he was a little bit better of a quarterback. Now, again, he's got another year. He took a big step this last year compared to the years before. Like the years before, he looked pretty undraftable to me. Last year, he at least looked like a day 2 kind of pick. So maybe he can take that next step. We'll have to see on that. But yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a couple guys that emerge every draft. I was listening to Chris Sims. I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, why are you listening to that guy? He's like, there's a lot of drafts. There's like 2 guys that I'm like, yeah, I could see them being something in the NFL. And then everybody else after that, I'm like, back up. And of course, teams are going to overdraft because it's quarterbacks. But yeah, it's still most years there's probably 2 guys that can really truly make it in the league, if that. I mean, the 2021 class was supposed to be a great quarterback draft, and you got Trevor Lawrence. And that's about it so far.
We're still wondering about Trevor Lawrence too, though.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Like we're still wondering, is he actually going to be the guy? KB, this is our guy Kenny Booker, by the way, jumping in with a $5 super chat. I'm going to grab this really fast because he's bringing a salient point here. Did you watch Colorado's offensive line last season? He threw a quick screen and was getting hit as he threw the ball. He was under insane pressure all season long. Yeah, absolutely, he was. Carl kind of dabbled into that. Like he didn't have great talent. Like the Worthy kid, obviously Travis Hunter, and who was the other one? I can't. Jimmy Horn Jr. I think was his name. His receivers were fine. That dude was constantly under duress. He was always under pressure, and that definitely didn't help things. But when he wasn't under pressure, he still continued to hold on to the football too long because he can't read defenses, and he would still take sacks. Like it's kind of a double-edged sword here. Let's go back to the Russell Wilson conversation. The Broncos offensive line, I'm not going to say it was great. I thought they played a hell of a lot better than people want to give them credit for last season. But when Russell Wilson did have time, he held on to the football and ran himself into sacks. It's a very similar situation with Shador Sanders up in Colorado this last season. Like, yeah, when he gets the ball out quick and on time, he's got a good arm. He's got good accuracy. He plays poise. He's out there making plays. But when you want to play within the structure of an offense, that's where Shador Sanders has to learn how to play better this year. And that's the big step that I want to see from him.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, he's one of those I could see take a huge leap. Right now, I would have had Sanders probably 7th quarterback in this draft if he was coming out this year. And I
Probably,
know
yeah.
a lot of people would
Yeah,
be
somewhere around there.
against that. But we got Mike Edel coming in with a $10 super saying the new rules are ruining the NFL. 10 years or less will be a pay-per-view flag football game. The product they put on the field today is subpar to even the 90s. Yeah, I don't mind most of the rules that they brought out this year. You know, some of the others, like pushing back the trade deadline, I have no problem with that. The IR rule, the emergency quarterback being able to come off the practice squad as many times as you want, I have no problem with those kind of rules. I do think that they have made it pretty much impossible to be a good referee in football anymore because there's just so many rules that they've got to watch for. And these players are so fast. Everything's happening so fast in front of them. They've got to figure out a way that they can simplify this, you know, or make it easier for the booth to overturn a bad call, you know, because I mean, they can do video stuff very quickly. Those refs get together and talk for 30 seconds before they go out there and say what the flag was anyway. Just during that time, have somebody up there watching and saying, hey, nope, that was not a penalty, or yep, that was an obvious penalty that you missed, whatever it may be. I don't know, but they got to do something to help these officials because we've seen too many games now, especially in the last couple of years, decided by officials' calls, where after a game, the people are not talking about the players on the field. They're talking about a call that the officials made.
Yep.
Now, it's always going to be there to a degree, but it just seems like it's really gone crazy. And like Mike said here, you've made life so difficult for these defenders. I hate it. You know, I love good defense. I've always loved good defense. You know, obviously the Broncos won a Super Bowl in 2015 with a great defense. I'm not sure that defense could win in today's football. And that was only 8 years ago or 9 years ago now. So yeah, it is. And Todd coming in here saying how many players are being hurt because of the hip drop tackles. It's actually a pretty decent number.
I actually have those numbers.
Oh, go for it.
I actually have those. So I actually have those numbers. It was I was reading just jumped. So they went over the competition committee went over the number of plays in the NFL, and they found 230 specific issues, about one per game, they're qualifying the swivel hip drop, where they're wrapping around a runner's body and they're picking their legs up, swinging them around, and dropping them on the backs of players' legs. Out of those 230 players, 230 plays, 15 players missed significant time. It's like 20%. 20% essentially of those players are essentially getting hurt and missing significant time due to injury because of the hip drop tackle. It's a significant injury, a very, very dangerous play. I don't necessarily have an issue with that one, but I do understand, like, you're talking about, you're talking a lot. How hard is it to tackle players anymore, especially when you're coming from the side? Like, this is another one. We were talking about Tip Ryman, a guy like Travis Kelce, for example. Guys that really Brock Bowers coming in this draft, players that excel running after the catch, bigger body players. How often are we going to see tight ends targeted in the flat specifically because they're hard to tackle, and cornerbacks are going to wrap up and throw this swivel hip drop tackle and break ankles? Like, it's something that does need to be moderated out of the game, but I don't necessarily think that it needs to be penalized. Like, you got to get a guy to the ground. Logan Wilson broke Mark Andrews' ankle this last season. Logan Wilson is a Wyoming guy. He's one of my favorite players in the NFL that's not a Denver Bronco. Unfortunately, he ended up breaking Mark Andrews' leg. If he doesn't make that play, Mark Andrews scores a touchdown. But what do you want me to do? Let him score? I got to get him to the ground somehow. Like, it makes it impossible to play defense. I hate the rule. I understand what they're trying to do, but you can't legislate injury out of NFL football, guys. When people go to the ground, people get hurt. That's just plain and simple. That's how life works. Mike Edel coming back in. You cannot tackle in the NFL. Look at all the highlight reels that are big hits. If they would not let them tackle, you wouldn't have to hip drop, or you wouldn't have to dive at players' knees, or you wouldn't have to ankle pick every time that you go to make a tackle out in open space. Like, they are making it impossible to tackle in the NFL level, and it's unfortunate because this is a game we all know and love to discuss. We all love and watch, and it's just frustrating. It is very frustrating.
Yeah, I remember actually listening to some players. They said that they were frustrated because obviously, players are going for their knees a lot more. And they said, I'd rather somebody go for my head than my knee. I can, and I disagree with this just because my wife she works with head trauma patients on a regular basis. And I don't think they always understand the true long-term effects of what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But in their mind, they're going, a blown out knee, I lose an entire season. I might lose my contract, my livelihood, concussion. I could maybe be back in 2 weeks, back on the field. Now, again, long-term effects compared to short-term, I disagree on some of that for them, but I get what they're saying. They're trying to set up their family for the next couple generations by the money that they're making in a few short years. And if they lose that because of knee injuries, that becomes a problem. So we got Phil coming in saying this hip tackle is a joke. I think it's going to extend games with all the flags that will be thrown, going to really increase running game stats. Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see how much they really call it. Is it just going to be the most obvious ones, or are they going to get into some very subjective calls? Because there's three parts that have to be a part of it. And but all three parts are pretty subjective. It's obviously every refereeing group is going to be looking for different things. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to go. So I don't know. I'm torn on that, but let's get back to a different subject here. KB coming back in with another $4.99 super saying, are any of the offensive tackle or guards locked as starters for the next 10 years in this draft? If so, who would you pick at 12? Are there any offensive tackles that can play left tackle and right tackle? So, I mean, I'd never say anybody's a complete lock for sure, but I do think this is a great tackle class.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. I mean, just some of the guys, if they were there at 12, as much as I want quarterback, it would be really hard. Joe Alt from Notre Dame, 6'8", 322-pound guy. I mean, just everything you are looking for, smart, strong, very technically sound. He would be an incredible pick. You got Fuaga from Oregon State, another big, strong guy that can play tackle or guard for you. Fatanu from Washington. I mean, all these guys are big. I'm trying to think. Fashanu from Penn State. That is one that I think could actually be there at pick 12. And I loved him last year because he could have came out in last year's draft. And if he did, there was probably going to be a good chance he was going to be a top 10 pick then. And I'm not exactly sure why he's fallen out of the top 10 this year. Maybe it's just because other guys have just risen up, plus the four quarterbacks being up there as well. But beyond that, I mean, he is another great one. I think all of them probably could make the switch from right tackle, left tackle. I think Fashanu is a little bit more of a true left tackle kind of guy compared to the others. But still, if any of them are there at 12 and the Broncos walk away with that, I don't think anybody should be upset about that. I know there's going to be people because there's a lot of people that are kind of like quarterback or bust. But truly, those are going to be those guys that you think you can build around that are truly they're going to be there for 10 years. You really have that view of them.
Yeah. I think that there's a guy, and Scott actually brings him up in our private chat here, locked at starter at guard for the next 10 years. Jackson Powers Johnson. That dude's, I love this saying. I heard it listening to a podcast from the Senior Bowl. I think it was Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs talking about Jackson Powers Johnson and what he was doing at the Senior Bowl this year. He's built like SpongeBob SquarePants. He is a square with legs. It's insane to watch. Built like a fire hydrant is another one that I've heard that I like that with him as well. For the Broncos at guard, I don't know that I mean, I wouldn't draft him to play guard. I'd draft him to play center at number 12 overall. Absolutely. You want to talk about plug and play top 5 center in the NFL for the next 10 years? That's your dude. Absolutely, that's your dude. Faltanu would be an interesting one because he can play probably all 5 spots. I don't know about center. I think he probably could do it. Not probably his best place, but he could play right or left guard, right or left tackle. Is a very interesting player there in terms of another just versatile guy. Graham Barton from Duke is as well. He has played all 5 positions at the collegiate level. He's probably going to be a guard at the NFL level. That's probably another locked-in starter. But I think if you're the Broncos and you're looking to go tackle, you got to. I hate to say this, you got to find a replacement for Garrett Bowles, and it's more of an age thing, contract thing. Like if you're going to find a player at 12 that is going to fit what you want, Olu Fashanu is probably the guy that you want there. To just with that left tackle ability, he's still a little bit raw, needs some more development, needs to play with some more power. But athleticism is there, the length is there, the pass protecting technique is there, and he would be a great pick if the Broncos do actually pick at 12. And so would this guy here. There's KB jumping back in saying thoughts on Byron Murphy, the second defensive tackle out of Texas at number 12 overall. I'm going to throw a funny story here. So Eric, we were watching the combine, and Eric put into our private chat, I don't remember the name of the Muppet character, but the one that has like the crazy dreads that comes all over his face with the wide mouth and the big eyes. Eric's like, it's the same picture. If you look at Byron Murphy compared to the Muppet guy, it's the same picture. It was hilarious. Regardless, you want to talk about bolstering up the interior of this defensive line that was terrible against the run, terrible creating pressure against the passer. Byron Murphy brings both of those things. He can play from the 2 technique all the way out to 5 if you need him to. He's athletic, he's rangy, he's versatile, he's just incredible, incredibly powerful, bursty, explosive. Like Byron Murphy at 12 would be a great pick as well. I don't think the Broncos are picking at 12. I really don't.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would love him to be on the Broncos because he brings something that they don't have on the interior right now. They don't have a guy that can actually get after the quarterback like he can, that can win with that first step ability and get right into a quarterback's face and force them to actually have to worry about edges coming at him. So if the Broncos decide, hey, that's what we need, and they take him at 12, I have no problem with that because he's still good against the run too. He's not just a pass rusher. And I think he's a very ascending player. Like one of the things I love to watch is what did they look like their first year playing compared to their second, compared to their third? Are they an ascending player, or have they been exactly the same player every single year? There's some of those guys that are special, like 5-star recruits, and like they have a promising freshman year, but then they still are that exact same player the rest of their career. And it's just like, okay, that's who they are. And so Byron Murphy, he's been one of those ascending players, getting better each year. And, I think that's why people for a long time were almost talking about his playing partner there in Texas a lot more early on. Yeah. And like now they're starting to just catch up on this Byron Murphy because they were watching him and all of a sudden he was flashing on the screen going, oh my gosh, look how good this guy is. He definitely deserves to be there, deserves to be the first defensive tackle taken in this draft. But we got Michael Ronquillo coming in saying Bo Nix is my new favorite quarterback in the draft. And I agree. Like, he's not my favorite, but I do like him, and I do like his fit with the Broncos. And I get it for a lot of Broncos fans. Like, I think we've kind of arrived at that conclusion that the odds of us getting up to the top 4 to get one of those guys is slim. And so I think a little bit of the Bo Nix, it's not only just his play, but it's kind of like, hey, okay, let's go see what he can do. Because we're so quarterback deprived, like we're starving and we have this big plate of quarterbacks in front of us. And we're like, just give us something just so we can have that little bit of hope. And I'm not saying Bo Nix is not a good quarterback. He is. And he deserves to be in that talk of being a possible starter in the NFL. And I could really see his personality, his intelligence. I could see so many things that Sean Payton would fall in love with this kid. He's mature. I know a lot of people have talked about where Sean Payton would never want to start a rookie quarterback. I don't think that's true. I think he's never really had to. That's just the thing. He's always had Drew Brees for most of his career. He only had 2 years where he didn't have Drew Brees as that quarterback. And then he got Jameis Winston. Winston played pretty good for him there for a little bit. So he's always kind of had those veterans that could at least do something for him. And his teams has never been in a position to go get a quarterback either. They're usually drafting later in the draft anyway. So I would be interested to see what he could do with a Bo Nix kind of guy. And because he has those 54 starts, it's more like he's not really a rookie.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be parts of him that are, of course, a rookie.
Right.
But there's going to be other parts, and he's married. He's been married, it seems like forever. I just think he's coming in as a more mature. Yeah, he's a very mature rookie. And so I don't think he's going to have as many of those rookie problems that you see with some other guys.
I think the big thing with Bo Nix is you were kind of talking about Byron Murphy and just the ascension of his play. And I'm not saying that Bo Nix was necessarily on the same plane, the same exponential growth that Byron Murphy was. But at the same time, when you go back and you watch the tape of Bo Nix at Auburn, it's like this kid is never going to sniff the NFL. And then he transfers, obviously goes to Oregon for a couple of seasons. And obviously here we are talking about him as a top 50 player in the NFL draft. I do think that's about where he goes from the 32 to 50 area. That's where I have my grade on him right now. I would have never even thought about going after Bo Nix with his Auburn tape, but he has grown incrementally year over year. And I think that you're bringing something into this conversation that's like you can work with a player like what Bo Nix brings you. And again, like I said with the whole Shador Sanders thing a little bit ago, one of the best things about Bo Nix's game is he gets the football out of his hands quickly because he processes the game at a high level. He knows where he needs to go with the football on his pre-snap reads, and he just does that. Everyone has the issues with the arm strength pushing the ball down the field. Yeah, sure, okay, that's fine. But at the NFL level, how often are you truly pushing the ball down the field, running within the actual scope of your offense? Typically not very often. You get like 3 or 4 or 5 maybe deep shots a game. For the most part, you're working over the middle of the field with timing, anticipation, and touch. These traits and these tools that Bo Nix brings to the Sean Payton offense are there. You're just never going to get the drive throws on the boundary. If you're looking for a comeback route on the opposite hash, you're never going to get that throw out of Bo Nix. You're never going to get the 65-yard Hail Mary throw that you need to have on a broken play just because somebody got loose on the back end. Like, that's not what Bo Nix brings. But what he does bring is a very stable force at the quarterback position. He throws the ball well with timing and touch, anticipation, accuracy. He has all of those things that works for Sean Payton's offense. Is it a perfect fit? I don't think so, but I do think that Sean Payton can work around the limitations of what Bo Nix brings to the tape.
Yeah. And we got KB82 with the question saying, what's the furthest Nix falls if we don't draft him? That's tough to say because
somewhere around 40, because the Broncos are going to draft him somewhere around 40.
Yeah. From what I've been told, Raiders are not very high on Nix. Like, they have other guys. I think Michael Penix is higher on their board than Nix is. I really do think the Broncos probably have Nix the highest of anybody out there. I think he's one of those quarterbacks. He has to go to the right system to really work. And so I think for a lot of teams, they're kind of going, we don't have that right system to make him work. Mm-hmm. We don't have the offensive mind to really maximize what he could bring to the table. Mm-hmm. And with this draft being so top heavy, and what I mean by that is like the first 2-3 rounds, there's talent. Beyond that, it falls off pretty quick in this draft.
Yeah.
And so teams are going to struggle to want to use one of those premium picks on a guy like, do we really see him as our long-term starter? Mm-hmm. Or do we see him more as our career backup? That it's going to be a really good backup. That's what you get the 4th through 7th round kind of guys that maybe have some high upside that can come in for some starts if you need them to. So I think his range is very difficult to figure out if the Broncos don't take him in that top 40 area. Could he fall a lot further? I don't know. I don't think he'd make it to the Broncos' 3rd round pick, but I think probably around 50 is where I'd put his max ceiling of falling in this draft. Somebody would probably take a chance at that point.
Right. I'm with you on that. And this was something I actually didn't know. And that's what, if you heard me typing here just for a couple of minutes just now, looking up. So when we want to talk about Bo Nix and the floor of where he's going to fall, or the ceiling in terms of the number, like the high number 50 around is probably where it's probably at. But let's talk about Michael Penix Jr. really fast. what is the one big knock on Michael Penix Jr.? There's two of them, really: injuries and age. I don't know that most people understand that Bo Nix is 3 months older than Michael Penix Jr. is. Like he's an older guy. Like Penix with the injuries, that's the big thing. He's torn his ACL twice. He has the AC shoulder sprain, and then another shoulder sprain on his non-throwing shoulder. Like the injuries are big time there. And I know from listening to a bunch of different people and talking to some people that were at the combine that have reported it. Michael Penix Jr. came out of those injury, out of the medical rechecks completely fine. So I guess, Carl, knowing that, I mean, with the injury concerns with Penix, with a clean bill of health, where does he rank for you in terms of like a player that could fall? I know the Broncos like Nix better because he's a better fit, but just let's talk about the prospects overall. Where does Penix fit for you?
He'd still be number 6 for me. I would say he has another big strike against him. He's not the most athletic guy.
Mm-hmm. That's a fair point.
The fourth strike I'd have against him, and this is where I just really worry about him for the NFL. He does not throw great when he's under pressure. Like he loses all technique, and his ball is kind of all over the place. Like you have those moments like the Texas game where it looks incredible and he makes all the throws, and then you got the Michigan game where he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn on some of his throws. And I mean, I'm being a little exaggerating there, but so I worry, Washington, he had this incredible offensive line in front of him where he had some plays where he could just sit back there for 6 seconds and not have anybody within 3 yards of him. That's not going to happen in the NFL. You might get like 2 plays in your entire career that are like that. And so that's why I push him down a little bit, just because in the NFL, we're seeing most of the top guys have at least a little bit of ability to escape and make some kind of play beyond what's in front of them, off schedule. Yeah. And that's why I have Bo Nix a little bit ahead. Is, he didn't do it as much at Oregon, but he can do it. It's there.
He didn't have to. Again, he got the ball out of his hands so quickly. And I agree with something that you just said. I think Michael Penix Jr., there was a statistic out there that the 3 years that he was at Washington, it seems like 7, because good Lord, he's been in college football forever. He was only sacked like 6 times. Like the Washington offensive line was just ridiculous. Like I think you were the one that brought that up in the group chat. Like he was only sacked 6 times going into the college football playoff in the last 2 years. Like ridiculous offensive line in front of him. Again, Troy Fautano, here we go. But I don't know. I think that there was some functional mobility within the pocket. We got to grab this comment from Michael too. But there was some functional mobility within the pocket and his ability to kind of use his eyes downfield that I liked a lot more than I liked with Nix. Nix would take off and just go run. Penix would he's got that sneaky pocket mobility. It's not the greatest, but he would try to create sneaky angles to get rid of the football with that wonky left-handed throwing release. Regardless, I'm a huge Michael Penix Jr. fan, man. Like he's quarterback 5 for me. I like him better than I like Bo Nix. I like him better than I like Spencer Rattler. Like Michael Penix Jr. is a dude, in my opinion. So I got to bring that to the show.
Yeah, I see. We got these dudes rating Nix as trash again. I didn't know rating a guy as a top 40 prospect was rating him as trash, but yeah, I get it. I mean, if we don't have, I've seen some people earlier today, they were like, oh, trade up to pick number 5 to get Bo Nix. Yeah, I'm not in that boat.
No.
I still think you can have a very winning team with him. He's just not one of those guys that sit there and say, you're going to win because of him. I think he can do enough, and I think he can have a great career in the NFL in the right situation. And I mean, most of these guys, if they go to the right situation, and I would say that about, any quarterback coming and working with Sean Payton, they've already got a leg up on a lot of other prospects for the offensive side of the ball just because of his system and what he can do with it. So I think any quarterback would be pretty fortunate to land in that situation. Of the other teams looking at quarterback, I would say Minnesota's maybe the other really good situation. You got a great offensive coach, and you've got some incredible weapons there with Hawkinson. I'm spacing on some of their wide receivers right now, but Justin Jefferson. Gosh, why would I forget that name?
KJ Osborne, who just left, and who's the other one? Can't remember the other one. Regardless, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, they have a great setup right there for any quarterback being able to come in. It's why they can probably feel better about trading up and like going, okay, we still have plenty for this quarterback to work with, compared to the Panthers last year trading their number one wide receiver to go get their quarterback. And I'm like, that makes zero sense. But no, I do. I love Bo Nix. I do think he'd be a great fit. And I think the Broncos would do great to go get him if they miss out on those top 4 guys. We've got a couple other quick ones coming in here. Riptie saying late again, sending some love to #Buckham. Riptie.
Thanks, Rip.
Better late than never. Appreciate you coming in, giving us a little love there. And always good to see you in here. And looks like Gary Palmer as well saying, great show, Carl and Lance, go Broncos. And I know Michael Ronquillo earlier said, great show for building the Broncos. Thank you, Michael, and all of you guys that have been coming in. Man, hours already flown by. And I think we all agree. Trying to say wait for Dak in 2025, not a good plan.
No.
If he's there and you don't have your quarterback position figured out, maybe we start talking about it then. But right now, I have no problem with the Broncos making that decision. Let's go get our quarterback, see what we can do, see if they can become something for us. And but I just wanted to say thank you to everyone coming in. Had lots and lots of you guys with Lawrence Rivera, Phil McLaughlin, Stephen Hyde, Michael Ronquillo, Tim Hall, Mike Edel, KB coming in here as well. Kenneth Booker, appreciate you. Let's see, Riptie, and of course Gary Palmer there at the end. All of you guys, it's just been a great evening with you, and getting ready to turn over the calendar to the best month of the year, April, other than tax season, but it is draft season as well. So appreciate you guys all chiming in, bringing up some great names, and getting into the best talk of the year, in my opinion, when it comes to football, talking about the draft. But just want to thank you guys for tuning in with Building the Broncos. Lance, thanks for stepping in tonight. Always good to talk to you. And of course, Scott working in the background. Always appreciate that. We got David Youngkin coming in here at the end saying none of the quarterbacks that played under Sean was elite except Drew. Well, I mean, and this is where how many elite quarterbacks are out there? And this is great coaches, in my opinion, are able to take their players to the next level. So if you're a good quarterback, they can help you be great. If you are great, they can take you to elite. Patrick Mahomes, I think he was going to be elite no matter what. But Andy Reid being added to the mix has just made his career possibly top 3 quarterback already. Could end up being the best quarterback to ever play the game. And I think in part because he got teamed up with Andy Reid, of course, had Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce to help him along the way too. So I don't think just because he hasn't taken another quarterback to that elite level, I don't think any of them that he had in the building were ever able to get there no matter who their coach was. Like Andy Reid could be stuck there with Jameis Winston and not be an elite quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
He could still be a good quarterback, just like what Sean Payton was able to do with him. Like he was on fire there for a few games before he got hurt. So, like I said, it's more of taking a guy up a level. You can't really take him up more than one level as a coach.
So, my rebuttal to this would be, because we as Broncos fans saw it firsthand. And in fact, I was at the Mile High Huddle meet and greet with Eric Trickle a couple of years ago, watching the Denver Broncos run out at 3-0 against the New York Jets in Mile High Stadium. And the stadium started chanting out, Teddy, Teddy, Teddy. Talk about Teddy Bridgewater really fast here, guys. Teddy Bridgewater was a 5-0 quarterback with a 10-2 touchdown to interception ratio for Sean Payton in New Orleans after Jameis Winston went down. Teddy Bridgewater was not a good quarterback for the Denver Broncos, and that's a fact. Like, it was a bad showing towards the later end of that season. That's what I'm not trying to overhype Sean Payton here. I trust and believe in him. I do actually believe that Sean Payton has the right vision for this team. But if you want to go about talking about him with Drew Brees, a top 5 quarterback ever, and then going to another quarterback that is obviously not a top 5 quarterback ever, there's going to be a significant drop off. But I think the example plays out well enough here. We watched Teddy Bridgewater play for the majority of a season here in Denver, and he went 5-0 with a 10-2 touchdown to interception ratio for Sean Payton in New Orleans in a season where the Saints were bad. They were a bad football team. Take that for what it's worth here at the end of the show. I apologize for the snappy response there, but man, I mean, like that argument just makes no sense to me. It makes zero sense to me.
Yeah, but we got KB82 coming back in again. The great question here saying, of the MHH cast, who has the best chance of being on ESPN in the next 10 years? So like as a guest on one of their shows or just in the background of some kind of broadcast? Now, I would say
me.
Oh man. You?
No. Like I'm gonna pump our guy up, Eric Trickle, man. If he could figure out how to not slap down on the trolls and whatnot, that dude is phenomenal. He's phenomenal. He could stand up in front of those guys with the confidence to actually do it. Kind of like Jordan Reed, where he came from the Twitterverse and went to the Draft Network, RIP, by the way, and then actually be a guy. I think Eric could actually do it. I really do.
Yeah, I'll give it to our man in the background, Scott, just because he's one of those guys. He's well versed in a lot of areas. He's touching in Atlanta. He can talk baseball. He can talk football. He can talk a lot of sports. I think he'd stand a good chance of ESPN wanting to see his face up on the screen up there. But no, we've got a lot of great guys in MHH. So
Scott comes in saying I was on 10 years ago.
Now I'm too old. See, man, I already knew it. I already knew this guy. He's a superstar. But no, appreciate you all. And like I said, MHH, you guys are the best in the comments. I think we got the best guys on the screens here as well. Not me, but I mean the guys that get to come on here each day. Appreciate each and every one of you. And again, go have a great rest of the week. Hopefully weather gets a little better for both of us. And we can get back outside here for the spring and get ready for some draft football, Bronco football coming up. And but anyway, love you all. As Nick was always liking to say, choose kindness, choose compassion, and go Broncos.